Call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order for Tuesday, November 13th, 2018. And as required by open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chairman prior to the start of the meeting, excuse me. Not hearing anybody, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Anyone for weekly briefing? Good evening, Chief.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dave Gilmet, Chief of Police. Just an informational bulletin tonight. No big deal. Some of you may have noticed that about a dozen or so of our officers, myself included, have started looking different.
Fuzzy.
This is
I'm all
called, yes. This is called No Shave November. I don't know, there's some information on our Facebook page about it, but basically, Harwich PD, some of our officers approached the command staff and asked permission to take part in No Shave November, which is basically designed to raise funds and awareness for veterans and their families suffering from the unseen wounds of war, PTSD, and other emotional, psychological issues. And so they're partnering with Mass General Hospital and the Red Sox Foundation, and we've got a page up to donate through. So each officer that foregoes shaving for the month of November donates at least $100, and so I'm very proud of them for asking permission to do it, and I think it's a good cause, and we'll see how it goes.
That's great. Thanks,
right.
Chief. Thanks for the update. What a great cause.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else for weekly briefing? Good morning. Good evening. I'm backwards tonight.
Hi folks, Emily Mitchell, the new Council on Aging Director. I just wanted to give a quick update. I'm excited to announce that starting today we will have a caseworker from the Homeless Prevention Council coming in to the Council on Aging, so it will be Tuesdays from 1 to 4. The Homeless Prevention Council serves folks from Harwich to P-Town, and I learned since I took this role that Harwich is the town amongst that population that they serve the most, and that seniors are an ever-growing proportion of that demographic. So I'm really excited to be offering this resource. If anyone has any questions, wants to make an appointment, get connected to them, don't hesitate to get in touch with us.
That's terrific. Thank you. Anybody else for weekly briefing? Moving on to public comments and announcements. Anybody for public comments and announcements? No? Okay, well then we'll go on if we can get a motion. Why is the minutes under public comments and announcements?
It's okay, it's there.
Well, then do you want to move it to the consent agenda?
I think they
Yeah.
got flip-flopped on
Yeah, I
the
think
agenda.
so. So we'll move that, Ed, so we'll move the minutes to the consent agenda.
Yeah, we can.
You're gonna move the certification there too, or?
Yeah, we move all of that section to the consent agenda under public comments and announcements.
Okay.
I think it just got put there by accident.
Check with Sandy.
So, consent agenda? I'd like to present the consent agenda and move approval of the items thereon, including the minutes of October 15th, regular meeting, October 22nd, regular meeting, October 29th, regular meeting, and a vote to approve and sign election certifications for Register of Deed, County Commissioner, and Assembly of Delegates.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Don.
Yes, Madam Chair, just one quick thing, because I asked the clerk on the way up. These are the total final results. They do include the mail-in ballots from overseas, so it's 100% return.
Okay.
Just a question, as I remember, the Register of Probate was on the ballot too?
I'm not sure why she's not certifying that.
Okay,
All right.
This is what we got.
yeah.
All right, so moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, public hearings and presentations. We have the annual meeting for the Wastewater Support Committee. Hi, Sharon.
Okay. Madam Board and board members. I'm the chairperson of the Wastewater Support Committee. The other members aren't here, but they include Peter Hughes, which is our vice chair, Noreen Donahue, which is our clerk, and the other two members are Ann Howe and Val Peter. So this particular, is this okay can you hear me if I'm off to the side of this?
Slightly, I think you better,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. This particular committee formed in January of 18, all right? And that, the first few months, we met 3 times a month. That was to get our election, and we come up with our charge, and then some of the projects that we wanted to work on, and then kind of prioritize them. After that, it was around March that we started, or after March, we started going to twice a week, which is now a Tuesday morning at 8:30 here in the Griffin Room, and Thursday evening at 6 o'clock or 6:30 in this room. The purpose of this committee, there's a kind of a long list, and that is on our website, but I think in general, the two major things are the outreach, which is between the town and the residents regarding, in particular, the Phase 2 sewering system. The other thing that we need to look at, and I brought this up last week, is we need to be starting to look at the whole wastewater program, the CWMP, and what was in the decision that came down from Cape Cod Commission and what they are requiring of us to do. So looking forward as to what our plans are, these are the continuing on with the outreach and the CWMP. As far as the activities that we did, all right, early on we worked with Channel 18, particularly Caleb, and we revised or reorganized our wastewater website, which from the feedback is a little more easily friendly user, where it's easier for people to find what they're looking for. The committee also coordinated several letters that went out to East Harwich. They're going to be sewered, and that gave him a status and progress of where we are in Phase 2 project. The other thing that the members did was to assist in the preparation of the town meeting. That was for the one in May. In April, one of our committee members met with the realtors from here in Harwich to give them an update, because they had questions as to what did they need to know when working with people that were either selling or buying homes. I think we were going to be following up and doing multiples of that as the information is gathered. In April, we also had Kendall Ayers. He's from the Barnstable County Septic Loan Program, and he came and presented a really nice program on some of the things that are available for the residents to help finance their portion of the sewer project. In June, we had some of the local banks. I'm not going to name which ones, but they came and presented what they had to offer for the people to come and talk to them, which is also in addition to or in place of the septic loan program. The other thing we did more recently is we put together that five-step hookup, all right? And then that is available here in the town of Harwich, I think it's in the Chamber of Commerce and the Brooks Library, are the 3 places where you can get it. And it's also online under the wastewater button. The other thing we then did was create a homeowner sewer connection book. That is also on the website. That one was not mailed out. That last one, the first one that I mentioned, was just recently mailed out to the people that were, of the 644, that were actually being sewered. So that went out. We did get some feedback that some of the people have already received it. And it went with a letter, and it went with that, and then more details to tell them that they could go on the website and look for that homeowner sewer connection book. The other thing we just did was we had a tour of the Cold Brook project, which I thought was very informative. All right, it was something that I didn't know a whole lot about, and that is also going to be part of the CWMP, so it behooves us to be aware of what was going on there. The last thing we did was that we worked on was a proposal for the communication coordinator for the wastewater. And since that has gone by the wayside, we are now looking at a project manager position. And today, at our meeting, we did work on that with Larry, and I think Larry's going to present something later on today, what our ideas are going forward. The other thing that did come up that I do, it's not last year, it's this year. We had a resident there today that asked about a timeline for what the residents need to do, not CDM Smith timeline, a resident timeline, which I thought was a really interesting way to look at it. And what she's looking at is, when do they need to hook up? Not an exact date. When do they need to know where their stub is? When do they need to contact a PE? So when I got home, I got a hold of Dan, and I asked him if he could put something together, which he did. I have it in an email form, but I want to kind of tweak it a little bit and then bring it back to our committee. And not that we need to send it out, but I thought it would be something that could be put on the website that people could easily click on and get that information. They did tell me that both Dan and Megan are going to put on workshops in the spring of this year to piggyback onto what these residents are asking for. Like, what do they need to do? Because from what they're saying, there's a lot of confusion out there with people telling them that they've got to sign up now. This is nothing new. And a lot of them are feeling pressured and really don't understand what they need to do when. So I think that, which is part of the outreach, and along with what we need to do with the CWMP, is what we're looking forward to for the next year. Any questions?
That's a great report, Sharon.
I was kind of winging it.
Extremely busy, we all know that, so we appreciate all your efforts, and board
The committee did a lot of stuff. They did a lot of work this year.
Done a
They
lot.
really did.
Right.
Yes.
So, Larry, do you have any?
No, it's a hard-working committee.
All set, thank you.
Ed?
No. Fine.
Don?
Doing a great
All
job.
right.
No.
I might get back up later on after Larry's
And
finished.
I did receive my letter. Did you get yours?
I did.
Yeah, so
Alright.
thank you.
All right.
Okay. Now we will go on. Good evening, Richard, to the Board of Assessors presentation.
Good evening. Unfortunately, I'm before you a few times. Jamie, I saw earlier at the community center, she said, "There's a long agenda, be quick tonight, would you?"
Are you done?
You have my report on file. But I wanted to recognize Bruce Nightingale, long-term member of the Board of Assessors, is with us here this evening, and Jay Kavanaugh was at our meeting. We just had a meeting prior to this. Could not be with us tonight due to a medical situation, so he wanted to let you know that. Our attendance is excellent. Everyone is duly sworn in and has taken their ethics training. We'll be talking a little bit later at our classification hearing. We do have a proposed tax rate for next year, and it'll be $8.66 per thousand, a drop of 14 cents per thousand, which will be based on an increase in the valuation of the town at about 6.9%. Couple things I wanted to remind people tonight, and although you have the report, a lot of folks who watch these meetings, the third billing will create your new valuation going forward for the next fiscal year. And a lot of our folks are going down south. They go to Florida, they go to the snowbirds. When the new values come out, especially in an increasing market with the almost 7% increase in the valuation of the town, people are going to see some of their valuations going up. And people may want to challenge that, which is absolutely their right under the abatement process. However, for people to do that, there's a small window of time in which you can actually file an abatement. And that time is from January 1st to February 1st. And it has to be here at that time. So anyone who's going down south, all of the valuations are available on the website, on the assessor's website. So there's really no excuse for wherever you are to not say, I didn't see it. So I would highly encourage people to get that done. Couple things. We have oversight with our overlay account. And we help people in this community. Last year, we helped 240 of our resident taxpayers. There were 240 exemptions. There were a wide variety of exemptions that were offered through seniors, veterans exemption, those with sight impairments, those with financial hardships. One of the things that we're not getting a lot of play on is the deferral program for seniors in our community who qualify. And the qualification is actually relatively simple. Your home is not considered an asset. So it doesn't matter what the value of your home is. But if you have less than $40,000 of assets, you qualify to have your taxes deferred. This is a program that's so important, and frankly, we only have 4 taxpayers currently utilizing that program. And we know people, and I ask everyone who's watching or here tonight, if you see people in the community who are struggling, this is a great program. The interest is at 8% simple interest. So let's say we have a taxpayer whose tax bill is $3,500, and they qualify for this program. They can set aside up to the entire amount of their taxes, that $3,500. The interest, a lien is placed on the property. They're charged 8% simple interest. It is not compounded. And if they're in their 80s and they're going to live another 15 years, the value of the house usually far exceeds anywhere close to what a lien would be. But that difference of that $3,500 can make a huge difference in someone's life. So we're trying to get the word. We'll be doing more and more outreach as a board to get that known to our townspeople and our taxpayers. It's a great program, and the difficulty we find is the greatest generation in this town of people saying, I don't want any lien on my property. I want to leave my property to my kids debt-free. The problem with that is we find taxpayers who are struggling to see that their kids be left a property at full equity. And so we have to get over some of that stigma, because there is none. This program could help many, many people in our community. So that's pretty much it. You've got my report on file. Any questions, Madam Chair?
Excellent report, too. Thank you very much for that. Do you have any questions, Don? Ed?
No, thank you, Richard.
All set, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you very much. And maybe we can think about ways that we can try to get that deferral program out there more. You're right. I mean, it's a great program, and that we offer it, and more people should take advantage of it, because to your point, many are struggling.
They are, and I was disappointed when because we deal with them, we have to approve them every year, to see only 4 taxpayers. And we've had people come in and had discussions with them. As folks come in to file a senior tax credit and say, well, I want to leave it to my kids debt-free. And what they don't realize, as a realtor in town, someone passes away, those kids are in the office a week later saying, put the house in the market. And that's the reality of it. It's true.
Larry?
You mentioned the stigma that people associate with this.
Mhm.
How's this compared to reverse mortgage that's advertised all the time? Because that, for me, has the same stigma.
It's funny, Larry, thank you for bringing that up. It's a great question. The problem is, a lot of times when people who have a reverse mortgage, they don't qualify for a deferral program, because the town takes first position at the registry as a lien on the property. And if someone has taken out a reverse mortgage, they take precedent. And the only way that we can let that program work for one of these taxpayers is to go to their bank and ask them to take second position. And most banks won't do it. So for someone who's got a reverse mortgage, if people out there watching this tonight, if you're giving consideration, what should I do? I'd encourage you to come in and talk to the board, because there are options out there. Reverse may be fine for someone, but if someone who can take advantage of this program, and we have some seniors who've inherited houses, been in houses for years, the valuations, you're going to hear later in the classification hearing what the average property is in town now is going to knock you over. So that there are people who could qualify, but if they've got that reverse, they can't qualify for the deferral program.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Richard. Okay, we'll go, and you can stay right there. Council on Aging.
I'm taking the Board of Assessors hat on and putting the Council on Aging. I do want to recognize we have 2 of our members here tonight, Joanne Lepore and Jim Magan, so thank them for being with us. It's been an interesting year at the Council on Aging. You heard earlier from our new director, who we're very, very pleased to have, and Emily was working with us as interim office manager in the meantime, and she's been keeping things going. The mission of the Council on Aging is very, very simple. We changed it in the last year. Is to support and advocate for older adults, their families, and their caregivers we've shortened that mission down. It's to take care of our older adults in our community, their families and their caregivers, of which we have many in this community. One of the greatest things that occurred this year is that to our friends at the Friends in the Council on Aging, with money that we found from the budget, that we had in the budget that was not appropriated any higher, that we were able to use in My Senior software. And if you've been to the Council on Aging, and if any of you who are members, you get a little key card. It's like that you put on your key tag. Anyone who comes in for an event, for a program, comes into the Council on Aging, hits their fob, and it says, what are you here for? And you check in. We are now getting data that we've never had before. That data is so important to what we do because our state grant is all based on the data of the number of people utilizing our services, utilizing our programs, and attending our events. And Emily, one of the first things she announced today, we now have a portable fob. So one of the things I'm involved in is the men's club. Our town administrator spoke this week to, we had approximately 75 men at the men's breakfast on Friday. And the guys come in, they get their name tags, they love to put it on, but they would have to go from the multi-purpose room back into the Council on Aging to check their fob. Some of the guys don't like taking those extra steps. But now there's a portable fob that we can use so that every person who attends is noted and we have their attendance. And people are embracing it. And we would ask guys, if you don't have it, could you please sign up? At the end of the meeting, they're all in there signing up. That is one of the greatest things that we can use. It now allows us to do reverse, basically, the 911 calls that we have, the robocalls. And again, another thing that Emily did in her first day is changed it. The robocall would come out reminding people of a program that we were having. And it could be used for a number of events. But the problem is the phone call was coming out from Somerville, Massachusetts. And as most people, if they don't know what that number is, they're not answering the number. So Emily, her first day there, actually, she found a way around that now it comes out from the Council on Aging number that everyone recognizes, and people are utilizing it. So the software is excellent. We've had some additional turnover this year. Kevin Grunwald, who had been with us for a number of years, who was excellent in what he did in social service, retired. You now find him up at the Truro Vineyards volunteering and having a good old time. But Susanna Keith, a Harwich resident, joined us as a new social worker and has done a great job. We also had appointed, and Mr. Howell, I know we had some discussions about this. There was a change at town meeting. They wanted to change our board structure to 9 members, and we'd had that change back to 7. Like many committees that are larger, difficulty with sometimes getting people at a meeting. So we're back at 7 members, we're full. But we also had a young gentleman who was a firefighter, Justin White, who heard us talking at town meeting, and he talked about the relationship we have with our public safety in town, and he said, would it be beneficial if I get on the board? He put in his application to you, and he was interviewed by your committee. He was appointed right now currently as an alternate or as a non-voting member, but he's there. And the relationship that we have from our social workers in our department to the public safety, both police and fire, has been tremendous. We find a lot of people who are falling through the safety nets. They're dealing with these people often, and we need to have them brought to our attention to see how we can bring services to them that are necessary. So pleased to have Justin on our board. The other thing I have to say, and just 2 more recognitions if I can, we have over 75 volunteers working with us diligently, and we couldn't do the job that we're doing. We couldn't put on the programs. We couldn't have the events that we have without the volunteers. So we want to shout out to all of our volunteers. And finally, our relationship with our friends at the Friends in the Council on Aging. We go to them, the My Senior software, we needed their help, and they helped. We're in the process of changing. If you haven't been to any of the events at Council on Aging, our luncheon program, our dinner programs are so important. But we found that some of the equipment in the kitchen was not adequate for us to get those meals done. So we've identified some funds, but the Friends, we also went to them to say, we need to get a new oven there to help the chef provide. We're getting it done. So those relationships are just important. Last shout out to all of our staff there. I mentioned Susanna, Sue Giselle, our town nurse, who does a tremendous job. Linda St. Pierre, our chef, Rick Anderson, our outreach assistant and volunteer coordinator, and of course our van drivers. We couldn't do the work without them. And I will tell you that those staff people, we're paying them for a certain amount of hours every week. They're working far, far greater because the needs of our seniors don't end Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. And the calls that they get, and Emily will find out very, very quickly, the calls that she gets on a Saturday or Sunday that there's a senior in crisis and that we need to be there for those residents. So that's my report. Any questions, Madam Chair?
Thank you very much, Richard. Great report. And again, any questions from the board members?
No, another great report. Good job.
Michael?
Thank you, Richard.
Ed?
Thank you. Yep.
Don?
You guys are doing a terrific job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, public hearing, classification hearing, Board of Assessors, right back up
Richard?
again. Ed, do you want to read the public hearing?
Shoot.
Oh, let me pull
got
it. You got it?
Let's see, this is the Harwich Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, November 13th, 2018, no earlier than 6:30 p.m. during the regularly scheduled meeting. The hearing will be in the Don B. Griffin Room located at Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, for the purpose of deciding whether all property shall be taxed at the same rate for fiscal year 2019 as set forth in Chapter 40, Section 56 of the Massachusetts General Laws. All members of the public having an interest in this topic are cordially invited to attend the public hearing and to provide information and testimony relevant to this matter and to participate in the Richard Waystack evening.
Signed us.
I gotta learn to say no, that's the problem. Madam Chair, I'll go through the formal part and then get into discussion if I may. At a duly posted Board of Assessors meeting on October 29, 2018, the Board of Assessors met and have voted to recommend to you, the Board of Selectmen, that you select a factor of 1, in essence taxing all property at the same rate in town, that we do not grant an open space exemption, that we do not grant a residential exemption, and that we do not grant a small commercial exemption. That will be our recommendation to you tonight as a board. Some numbers for you to understand, and as I talked about earlier, our valuation of our town has gone up. It's gone up substantially. It's gone up almost at 6.96% over the last year. You've seen it in the market. And we're coming up with a proposed rate of $8.66 per thousand, which is a drop of 14 cents. As the market goes up, as the valuation goes up, the tax rate goes down. You cannot increase levy just based on valuation alone. So there's a compensating drop in the actual tax rate as the valuation goes up. We've gone up with the market. It's starting to level, and it will level further next year. And so we'll see some changes as it comes. That's why we have that recommendation for folks to take a very close look at their valuations when it comes out. It'll come out right after Christmas. But please take a close look and if necessary, file an abatement. We'd be happy to look at those. We've heard in the news a lot of communities looking at different factors and offering different exemptions. We're not in a position to do that. You know, when just some numbers that I'll give you, because it comes up every year as a discussion. Right now, if we were to do any type of exemption at all, in essence, there are about 5,000 residents that could benefit. But it would be over 4,600 residents that would pay for any change that's made. We don't have a lot of commercial industrial area in this town. We're predominantly a residential community. And I told you that you're going to fall off your seats when you hear it. The average residential parcel in our community now is $542,000. Brings up a lot of other issues that we have absolutely no control over here. But we've found, and we've had very animated discussions at our Board of Assessors meetings. We've done things to try to address the issues of the affordability for some of our seniors in our community. We've gone to the legislature, and the town meeting has approved the last 2 years where we actually triple the senior tax credit. The Commonwealth allows us to double, to go from $500 to $1,000. Our town has seen it fit to go to $1,500. And I'm pleased to let people know, and taxpayers who are watching tonight, if people are having a difficult time, our seniors could qualify for up to $3,000 off of their taxes through both the senior tax credit and the senior work-off program. The Commonwealth allows both of those programs to be utilized at the same time. You know, our overlay account, just to put it in perspective, it's about $460,000 out of a very, very substantial overall budget. Those are the numbers that we use to take care of our most vulnerable citizens in this community. And again, you heard the numbers earlier, 240 exemptions, 4 deferrals. We're not getting a lot of them. And so we are going to be working diligently on outreach throughout the community to let people know the programs that we have. But by changing the exemptions, that doesn't solve the problem. We, as a board, and we've had, and Bruce has been adamant about having this discussion every year and looking at ways, is it potential for us to have any exemption as a residential or a small business? It just doesn't make sense for this particular community. So we, Madam Chair, would make that recommendation that you vote a factor of 1 and do not grant any exemptions for either residential, small business, or open space.
Thank you. Any discussion?
It's still a hearing.
What?
You have to ask other people.
Oh,
It's a hearing.
sorry, right. Does anyone in the public want to speak? No? Hearing nobody, any board members want to? Dawn?
Unless someone has anything substantive to say, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Excellent.
Closing the public hearing.
We have to close it.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Dawn?
Madam Chair, I move that the town of Harwich select a factor of 1, taxing all property at the same rate, that we do not grant an open space exemption, we do not grant a residential exemption, and then we do not grant a small commercial exemption.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
you,
you.
Richard. Okay.
Can I go home now?
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't
I think
know.
you're free.
You keep popping up.
Please.
CPC project application submitted by Conservation to extend the jetty landward at the east end of Red River Beach to help curb erosion. We have Amy Bizowski here, our Conservation Administrator, to speak to us.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to give you the same presentation that presented to the Community Preservation Committee last week, and that I will be giving to the Real Estate and Open Space Committee this week. So the project is going for a CPA application has been submitted to the Community Preservation Committee for the amount of $100,000 for shoreline stabilization at the east end of Red River Beach. And just so everyone seeing, this is the area right in here that we're talking about that's been a problem for several years. A little background on Red River Beach for you. The town took the 8.4 acre property by eminent domain in 1954 for beach purposes. It is a coastal barrier beach with extensive salt marsh behind it, which protects a number of homes. The property is under Selectmen care and custody. It's the largest public beach in Harwich with 190 parking spaces. The approximate annual revenue per the Recreation Department records are daily beach passes about $60,000 per year, food truck revenue about $5,000, and an unknown portion of annual beach sticker sales. Uses of the area: walking, sunbathing, swimming, fishing, photography, basically passive recreation. Our problem. So I distinctly remember 6 or 7 years ago when I came here, one of the tasks the previous administration gave me was, Amy, can you help find a solution essentially to the east end where the Red River comes in, mainly this area. At that time, there was literally 3 feet, I measured it, from the edge of pavement to a drop off. Currently now we have a few more feet, but the reasons why we have a little bit more now I'll get into in a minute. But essentially what you're having here is kind of the classic end effect, what we call it, of a revetment. I really should call it more of a revetment of shoreline protection rather than jetty. I don't want people to think that we're adding to the seaward end of the jetty. This is much more of a revetment which protects a banking. And when the Army Corps of Engineers put this jetty in many, many years ago, it probably did a great job of, and the land was probably much farther out. Well, the Red rivers want to go where they want to go. And we're not getting any, sand is moving west to east, so we're not getting any sand from the west here because the jetty cuts it off. So we're getting depleted, but we're also having the river move. So what happens is, at the end of a lot of revetments that were built many years ago without the proper tapering and soft end, where they just have an abrupt end, is you get this what's called end scour effect. And then it evens back out again. Just some other photos. Here you can actually see the filter fabric, which I'll talk about shortly, that was installed several years ago. So right at the top here, that's where the drop-off was at the time. What the town is doing, and I'll get into a little bit more as well, is we're kind of required at this point to do a soft solution to stave off this erosion and save that turnaround. And we have been using bank sand and routinely depositing that several times a year to save that east end parking turnaround and the banking. What's happened is it's silted in the mouth of the Herring River. There used to actually be a mooring field out here between Harwich and Chatham. Not many, but there were a couple. And because we're routinely adding sand, which has protected the parking, we're actually doing harm to the river. And that's why I personally am behind this project. I think we're doing more harm than good. So preventative measures already attempted. When I started here the first year, we added fill, filter fabriced it, put in about 300 sandbags, covered it, tried to plant it. Those sandbags lasted all of 1 year. The plantings didn't take either, just too much erosive forces. Since then, in 2012, we did apply and got permission from the Harwich Conservation Commission to install what you see here, what is proposed here, which is a 50 to 60 foot long extension. Unfortunately, the State Department of Environmental Protection overturned that decision. And the reasoning behind that, I might as well get into it right now, is the Wetlands Protection Act states that you cannot have a hard solution such as a rock revetment or a bulkhead unless it's protecting a pre-1978 dwelling. We don't have a pre-78 dwelling here. However, the reason I'm back before you for this now is in the past several years since then, I've seen 2 projects go through in this town exactly like this without pre-78 dwellings near it, and DEP approved them. So currently what we are doing is routinely placing sand. DPW has been very, very, very helpful in doing this. It protects the turnaround in the parking area, but it is silting in the mouth of the river. And again, no more mooring field. So we're doing a soft solution, which is what DEP wants us to continue doing, but I think it's having a more detrimental effect to the environment there. So our request, first of all, this has not gone formally in front of the Conservation Commission yet, again, since 2012. It will very shortly. We're revising the plans now. So our proposal is to extend the revetment landward 50 to 60 feet, hugging the banking, repair the slumped portion of the existing end. About the last 25 to 30 feet, when I met with the contractor out there, we noticed that that end's in really bad shape. So while we're there, why don't we see what it's going to be to fix that too? We would maintain public access to the area, just as there is now. There would be a path down to that little beach area. It would be slightly shifted. We did receive a courtesy quote from Robert Our Company just last week, 2 weeks ago. And that quote came in at $70,000 for the new 50-ish foot revetment extension and $8,000 for the repair of the slumping end. Our request to CPC was $100,000. At the meeting that we had last week, I did recommend or requested that we keep, even though the courtesy quote came in low, it is just a courtesy quote. And rock work, based on my experience, is, especially in other towns, which far more erosion, rock work gets really expensive really fast. So we did ask to keep that. How it fits the criteria, just really quickly, it'll restore and rehabilitate open space property, which has a really high recreational value in this town. The local comprehensive plan calls for the protection of critical habitats such as barrier beaches and salt marsh, as well as protection of water quality. This project will stop what marsh there is there at the mouth from being silted in just at an abnormally high rate. Salt marsh can't stand sand being dumped at it at the frequency we're doing. It'll also stabilize the barrier beach and enhance the water quality, as the Red River will be able to flush more efficiently. There's no proposal to dredge that out. I think over time the natural process of the tidal cycle will open that back up. It also meets some of the goals of the Open Space and Rec Plan, as it preserves and enhances natural resources and would allow the area to continue to provide opportunity for passive recreation. Essentially, this is, I think we've tried every possible thing we can up until this point. Next steps. First of all, the Recreation Commission and the Capital Outlay Committee have unanimously supported this application to the CPC. On November 13th, here we are. I told you I gave this last week. This Friday, we'll be presenting to the Real Estate and Open Space Committee. The engineering department is revising the site plan. Because it is 5 or 6 years old, we will just revisit the high tide line and just, I think the plan now shows a 50-foot extension on it. We will put it up to 60 feet. The town will have to file with the Local Waterways Committee, as a portion could fall below the mean high water line. We're doing our best to keep it above, so we do not have to go for Chapter 91 license with the state. File with DEP, the Conservation Commission, obtain approvals. Hoping to do that this winter. If the permits and the funding is awarded, the project would take place ideally this time next year. With weather and who else knows, the latest it would absolutely be done is early spring of 2020.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the board? Larry?
Well, good presentation, certainly. I like the project. When I first moved here, of course, it's been 19 years ago, I had a sailboat on that. I only needed 3 feet, but that's long gone. See, process-wise, if you got permission if you got the money from CPC, I assume you would spend part of that to see if you could get it through DEP, and then that'd be basically phase 1, and if you got approval, you move for the rest of it. If not, then we return it to CPC.
I don't think we need the money for any type of permitting. We have the ability in-house to do the engineering. We have the ability in-house to do the applications to those agencies. So unless there is an appeal, in which case we'd probably put the funding request off for another year. But I don't anticipate any of the funds for CPC going towards permitting.
Okay.
Amy, you mentioned that it hasn't gone through conservation yet. Conservation supports it, the board, right? They support the concept?
They haven't really weighed in on it, to be honest, because it's at this point they want to see all the options available. It's a different board than it was in 2012, and without having a public hearing, I think it was they're supportive of finding a solution to the erosion problem at the east end.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Don?
But, thank you, Madam Chair, but they would be required in order for CPC with their internal controls to consider this, so that there would have to be an affirmative vote.
Yes, so right now the application is almost done being prepared, and the plan just needs a slight revision to it. It'll be submitted to the Conservation Commission. We'll have a public hearing. I would say at the very latest, the first of the year.
Okay,
This coming
because that timing is critical.
I understand.
That's when they're going to be sorting out their priorities.
I understand.
Michael?
So, Amy, you're looking for our support tonight on this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, if I may?
Yeah,
I move-
can I just ask
Yeah,
a question?
go
And Ed, did you have any question? I just had a question in terms of the DEP, where they gave you a hassle last time. How long will they take, and I know possibly you don't have an answer for this, but after, if you get Conservation's approval and you go to DEP, how lengthy of a process do you think that will be?
The same time that we submit application to the Conservation Commission, it gets submitted to DEP. And if they usually just issue a file number, they issue some comments. The Conservation Commission cannot close our hearing until we get a number essentially from them. But if the Conservation Commission approves the project, there's only a 10-day appeal period for anybody, and that includes DEP to appeal the project. There's a 60-day appeal period under our bylaw, but the DEP appeal would be under the Wetlands Protection Act from the state, and that's 10 days.
Okay, thank you. Michael?
I move that we support the CPC project application submitted by Conservation to extend the jetty landward at the east end of Red River Beach to help curb erosion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We'll go
Twice.
with, yeah, we'll go with Don, whatever.
Doesn't matter.
So moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy.
Have a good night.
You too. Yeah, Michael? Oh, sorry, I thought you had a question. So, on to the new business, recommendation on Ember's disciplinary hearing held on October 31st, 2018. Do you want to just go ahead?
I move that we approve the recommendation of the disciplinary hearing officer, i.e. the town administrator, on Ember's disciplinary hearing held on October 31st, 2018.
And that we signed suggested letter, or?
Well, we're supporting it, so there's a letter, we'll sign it.
The letter would be from you guys.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, yeah? Michael?
Thank you, Chris, for doing those hearings for us. I've read through all the minutes and attended one of them, and you do a very thorough job, and you're very fair for all sides.
I appreciate that, thank you.
And a request by Planning Board member David Harris to use remote participation at meetings from December to the first meeting in May. And do we have anything here? Okay, so we have a member looking to use remote participation. We have a policy on it. Does anyone have any comments, questions? Michael?
We approved this last year,
Yeah.
same timeframe, correct?
Right, I think
Okay.
so.
And is there anyone in the waiting to be on the planning board that's here year-round, do we know?
I don't think we have anybody on the planning board in terms of waiting.
It's gonna be Mike.
The feedback
Question.
from the chair, this current chair of the planning board, as well as the last, is that Mr. Harris puts a lot of time in,
Right.
and he does participate remotely in every meeting. He doesn't miss them, he does his homework, and
Mhm.
that he's an asset to the board, so.
Okay, so can I get a motion? Any further discussion?
I appreciate Michael's statement, because that was going to be my question, that the rest of the board supported it,
Mm-hmm.
because it is asking a lot to do remote participation for this longer time period, but, somebody going to make a motion, or?
Yeah, does it,
But to Michael's point, we approve it this year, it's not an open-ended thought, I mean, because this is a really important body.
You have to keep
Our
going.
preference would be to have people
Right.
here and engaged
Mhm.
here. But with that, I'd be willing to motion that we accept the request for approval to allow remote participation on the part of Dave Harris in the months of December, January, February, March, April, and the first meeting in May for the planning board at the request of the chair of the planning board.
The request is actually from the member.
That's true, but they actually,
He did chime in.
yeah, he did chime in last week.
so do you want to clarify, or,
I mean,
No.
okay,
the request in our packet is from David Harris.
it is,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll leave it at that then.
Right. Okay,
I'll second that.
so moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And the RFP for wastewater communication and outreach coordinator / owner's project manager. Chris, do you want to speak to this? Or do you want to have? or-
didn't
or
get a
I'm
chance
sorry,
to
Larry, you're
fully
going to.
attend the meeting this morning, so
I-
I defer to Larry.
I can start, and then we'll
Okay,
go.
thank you, Larry.
Because we did have, as Sharon inferred, we had a lengthy discussion this
Sorry,
morning.
right.
And I waited to give some dot points on my thoughts until we had the committee discussion, so that's why it wasn't in the packet, but it's late. This has been a little bit, part of the discussion is that we're getting into this idea of project manager or project coordinator basically after the fact. We've already started the project, and we're in phase 2, we've done a lot of the engineering design. And so some of the items that would be pretty much cut and paste if we were building a new building, for instance. You know, we start with a project manager to take on, but we're beyond that. So Part of the discussion this morning was to use the term program coordinator or project coordinator rather than manager, to take that into account. Just in procedurally, what I've done is to try to put some dot points on conceptually what we would like this position to do. And in a nutshell, is to pull, we have a lot of moving parts. In a nutshell, the main function is to move all those moving parts together so we have it in a central location that people know what's doing it, and we're keeping track of it. Secondly, in terms of the program management part, is we haven't paid a lot of attention to what the county commissioners in the state have said we have to do to maintain our permits, if you will, the district of whatever it's called now, the environmental concern, regional impact statement. Those are list of requirements. And Chris and people, I applaud this. We did put in our annual report, but I gave one example here of what they ask us to do. And there's a lot of other criteria that a lot of other information they want us to submit on a regular fashion. And this person would do that. Public engagement is obviously a huge part of that. This is a stronger position than our communication coordinator that we talked about a bit, because this does tie them together. And I'm not sure I need to read the dot points on this. You can ask, but you can read those as well. And then the financial aspects. Now we want to be careful. We're not trying to take the position of being a financial controller on this. What we're trying to do is be sure that information comes back to the committee and to us, so we know what's being spent when we're monitoring it and tracking it. The same can be said of the wastewater plans. The CWMP, are we moving ahead on that? Are we fulfilling our obligations? So it's tracking it. Some of our discussion this morning, and I do think that if we can have part of the discussion today, I'm not pushing for any vote on this. The idea is, because this is, again, concept. What this is missing is the detailed plans, what would be the reporting criteria, the deadlines and stuff, the expectations, so we can go out for an RFP that Chris has given us some information on. We need to flesh this out with some of those details. But I'd like to get this committee to agree of the overall direction, so we can come back to you with this fleshed out. The other discussion that particularly was a lengthy one at the meeting this morning was structure. How do we make this happen in a way that makes sense, that there's a free information flow? And does that mean that if we hire a contracting firm, does it report back to us in a dotted line to Chris, or to the committee and dotted line to us? Is it to Chris and a dotted line to us? Some of the concerns have been in the past that information hasn't flowed as quickly as we would have liked. And that's not pointing finger. Everyone's very busy, and multiple questions come up. So we want to be sure that there's free and open and questions get answered, because the primary purpose of this is getting it done right and getting it done so that the public feels it's done right, which are basically two different items, if you will. So I would invite discussion. I'll try to answer questions. Chris can chime in. Sharon obviously chairs the wastewater support committee. I've tried to methodically move this through we brought this back several times here. We've had some good discussions at the waste. We've spent 3 hours this morning, good share of it, on this subject. And here we are tonight, and looking for your input and judgment on the best way of moving forward.
Thank you, Larry. And we appreciate all the effort, because, as we said earlier, the wastewater committee's been doing quite a bit of work. So, Chris?
Just to, I was trying to follow up on this, and I did have a meeting later on this afternoon with one of the contractors that we had sent the material to, and had them I said, what did you like and what didn't you like? And it's a bigger firm. The one thing that they said, I have had a relationship with them in previous jobs. So they said they not only marketed it in their own firm to see if they could do it, but they also marketed it to smaller firms that they have relationships with.
And they said that people really weren't too interested in the public outreach coordinator element, because that's more of like a PR firm. And I'm just telling you what they told me this afternoon, just some feedback. But they said that, you know, it's a little bit more common, I think, Madam Chair, you've mentioned this, about the element of kind of owner's project manager. That's something that is more known in the industry. And that if we were to market it more as an owner's project manager, we may get some more interest, because people will kind of understand what we're looking for. They did say, because of the Facebook and some of the other outreach things, that, you know, one of the things that we may want to give some consideration to is maybe just hiring a part-time staffer and kind of servicing that kind of PR element, or making sure that we have people coordinate. That is something that, I know we had some discussion in the past, that, you know, if we can't find anyone, a firm that come in and do it, does it make sense to use some of the resources that we have allocated for sewer operations while we're building up that money to pay to Chatham when we hook up? Could we use some of that leading up to it to do some of this work that we're trying to get accomplished?
I think those are good suggestions. I tried to, I guess not so much in this, but I would assume the OPM format would be generally what we want to go with as we move forward. But I didn't want, but those are good points. I didn't build that specifically into this, but that would be the next.
I didn't finish my meeting with them until 4:30, so I mean, I haven't had a chance other than right now to kind of relay
great.
some of those inputs.
Don, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is definitely heading in closer to the direction that I had in mind myself, at least. But let me point out a couple of things here. The analogy about this being more of a owner's project manager, it's not the same as building a building. CDM Smith is taking care of building where the pipes are going to go and coordinating that. What's different about this is if we were building a school and we're relying on 700 people to show up to help build the school, you've got people that have to interact at the end of when those pipes get laid in order for them to finish the job. We're not finishing it for them. So we do need somebody to coordinate that. We also likewise need somebody to coordinate what we've promised and when we promise to have it done. And nobody's paying a lot of attention to that, and there's whole classes of questions about hardships and whether we've got them in place as policies. I view this more like a molecule. I know that sounds arcane, but I mean, there's a lot of activity going on around the center of something that we've got nailed down, but we don't have the rest of that stuff around it nailed down. It's not like a regular project where you turn onto the road and you just keep going down until the end of the road and then you're done. There's a building and we cut ribbons. There's a lot of stuff that relies on other people. Whether they're state activities or people that live in town or boards that have to take actions, it's daunting. There's just a lot of stuff that's going on, and somebody's got to be on top of, is this all happening in a timely manner? It's not just the milestones, it's who's responsible for the milestones and what date for each individual milestone do we have to have something done. So with that, the idea of a staff member is actually much more appealing to me than a contractor because we own them.
If I may, to your point, Don, that's why I tried to put in this work with responsible town departments. It's hard to try to bring this all together because we have not only that, we have Pleasant Bay going on, we have the county going on to bring that together. And so, you know, that's definitely important. Is how we, in the staff person, that does make some sense to get it going.
But that was my point. This is a lot close. This is heading down the
Oh,
road
I know.
that's a lot
I'm
closer.
going to see now. One other comment I want to make is that even though we're focused on phase 2, my point this morning was that this also should be the format, should set the stage for how we're handling the next phases. So, you know, we have a broader objective. I mean, phase 2 obviously is what's on everyone's mind, but we should set this up so it's directionally, you know, gives us a format for how we handle all the next phases going forward.
Thank you, Larry. Ed, do you have any questions, comments? No? Michael?
I think I have too much to say. I don't know how you put a number on this, and I hope we don't hinge any decision we're gonna make on a Facebook page. Later in the meeting, we'll talk about Facebook. A lot of this I see as somebody that's already employed by the town, that we actually put sewer or wastewater behind the end of his name. Dan Pelletier, the Water Commissioner. I think we're kind of reinventing what we already invented when we made that position. So, Larry, with your permission, I'll send you my thoughts on this.
Yeah.
But a lot of this tracking stuff, and thank you, Sharon, brings this to my attention weekly. I think we talk about this. This really does belong as a staffer. This does not belong as a firm we need to hire. And I think back when we talked about public coordinator to get out to the public and meet with neighborhoods, in my mind, I think that's still where we are. And a lot of what we're talking about on this sheet really does belong to Dan Pelletier and his staff, how we get there. And then I would say, Facebook, if we're gonna go there, maybe that belongs to Channel 18, and we hire somebody or give some extra money for, adding stuff to a Facebook page. No doubt that we need somebody, and we need somebody soon. I think that there's some ideas floating around, and some names have been mentioned. I know we didn't get anywhere with the firm, and hopefully Chris is, in doing some tracking of why they didn't bid, will come up with a more appropriate number that they want to get paid. But I don't think one person should do this, and I really think that we need to kind of figure out where Dan Pelletier's at and how much of this is going to be his job anyway.
Just to that point, Madam Chair, we did have a vision about 2 years ago that we wanted to have the wastewater and water be merged and for Dan to be the lead. We did do some special legislation to amend the charter to kind of get to that element, and that didn't go all together that well. I think that they're scheduled to come up at the next meeting or so. And, I like to have that be revisited, so Dan knows clearly that by the charter, that they are gonna be water, wastewater. And we've had internal discussions where a lot of those checkoff lists, the compliance list, he does that now on the water side. So he has a group of people that are able to do that and to take that task on as part of the wastewater. I think if we formalize and get that accomplished, that is now gonna be water/wastewater, he can get going on that, and certainly with administrative support, to make sure that we comply with those elements of the CWMP that we need to comply with.
Right. Well, and I also, in terms of looking whether it's an employee, a staff, or is it a contractor, the only other thing I would say, I don't have an opinion on that, whatever one works best, but my concern there is that if it's a staff or it's an employee, then we have health benefits and all these other pieces that we have to worry about. And I see this as going even further. I mean, Dan is gonna have a lot on his plate as this ramps up, and he already is doing a great job. But, there's gonna be other elements of this whole phase, and to your point, the following phases, that also need coordination, not only with the public, but we also have to think about traffic and how are we phasing this, and if one neighborhood is gonna be going and they're using one contractor and such, we have details to think about and traffic management, and there's a lot of those pieces that Dan won't be able to do, because that's really not his realm and shouldn't be. He has enough to do. So,
If I can comment on that, because I have a little different view, I think maybe Michael and Chris have, because we debated this. My view is that the Board of Selectmen would be, and I think this is what we agreed to one time, was the Board of Selectmen would be responsible for the implementation of CWMP and the construction of the pipes, basically. Once that was done, we turn it over to the water, wastewater, and water department. And I would strongly hope we hold that view, because doing this project is more than just that phase, the construction. We have to worry about what items you mentioned. We have land control policies that we're looking at, comprehensive plan that ties into this. We may have to buy property for the DHY. I think the Board of Selectmen should maintain that responsibility for the implementation of the plan and the construction. Once that's done, it should clearly be handed over for operation and maintenance. But then that flavors our discussion of when we pull Dan into being part of that discussion. Or is, well, that's enough of that.
Yeah. Michael?
I wanted to add one thing about Dan. I think that, you know, for anyone that hasn't read his resume, he's done a lot of this wastewater stuff in other towns he's worked in. That was one. Larry, to your point, the Board of Selectmen will control. In the end, we really control all of it. We're not gonna do the
Well-
work though, right? I mean, like all the contracts and the bids before us, we don't do any of that.
Right.
They do it, and then they bring it back to us through the town administrator. And I would say, and I wasn't talking about the whole thing, and I do think we need to hire somebody,
Right.
but things like the last bullet point on the first paragraph, work with responsible town departments to ensure the CWMP
Right.
and all the information, why would we hire somebody to do that? Why would we hire somebody to track that and not use Dan Pelletier
Well,
and a
You
wastewater
want-
supervisor?
I may not have been clear. I was kind of agreeing with Michael's, you know, interpretation, that that's what we had talked about. But having an owner's project manager, somebody to help the selectmen, help myself on the front end, is still a need that needs to be filled. Once we get to when the work is done, and a lot of what the CWMP calls for is annual reports, updates,
then that should be turned over.
all that should be turned over. So
Right.
just to clarify, I kind of emphasize one part, not the other.
Right, okay. Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to underscore what the administrator just said, if you go back and watch the tape of last week's meeting, when we were talking about the as-bills, Dan sitting at one side of the table saying, I've only got one request, it's not a problem. And then Megan said, I've gotten a whole bunch of phone calls. There isn't that interaction between the departments that's necessary to get the thing to the point where Dan can run it. Because there's a lot of interdepartmental things, there's a lot of intercommittee things. Board of Health still hasn't voted on how they're gonna handle their exemptions. You know, twofold. I just put a septic in last year, it's brand new, and now you're making me put another one. How are they gonna handle that? What time frame were you talking about? Because there isn't anything voted yet. Or I've got a failing system, are they gonna allow me to limp in with it getting pumped out? No policy voted yet. There's a lot of loose ends here.
Let me just restate, and I don't want to take any function that people are already doing. My problem is, or I think our issue is, a lot of people are doing different things. And what we're trying to do on this is find the easiest way to pull it together so that we know as a board who's doing what to whom, and are we meeting our requirements. And, you know, all of you, Michael, you suggest, but all of you, send me any suggestions you have, and I'll take them, I'll bring them back to the wastewater. Because this is a starting point. I don't, if I were smart enough to figure out how we do all this easily, I would have just given you something concrete. I'm not.
Well, there's a lot of
But I
moving
do,
parts.
but I do want us to move rather quickly, because I want to get this out there.
Right.
So we can start something going on, we can get where we're going, do what we can this year, then move into the fiscal year next year.
Agreed. And I think if everybody can go through, you know, what Larry has put together and give him feedback so that we can have a better discussion. I don't know, probably not next week, but the following week.
Well, just on that, the firm, I did ask them,
Yeah.
I said, you know, can you give me a draft of what you think
Oh, that'd
would
be
kind of
great.
be more marketable? So once I get that,
That
I'm
would be
happy
helpful
to share
too.
that.
We can sit and talk some more.
Michael?
Yeah, and Don, just to your comment, my only point is, a lot of this on this sheet, we do have to hire somebody for. A lot of it should fall internally, and to your last point about Megan not being on, getting as much as Dan, or Dan not getting, that to me is gonna just fall under the Board of Selectmen picking somebody that's a department head, which I believe we've already picked, because we have filed for legislation to make Dan that guy, and get him the point person, and have everybody else feeding to Dan and feeding back to us through Chris.
I was just saying that it didn't seem like they were communicating to the point where each other knew what the other was doing, and that's important.
Well, and I also think that that falls to, you know, the point that they're all working on a lot of different things and this, and it's a lot of work. And so you have everybody working very diligently, but they also have their main function. So, you know, we're asking them to take on all these other pieces, which are again, gonna continue to ramp up over the next couple of years. And, you know, if you have somebody who's overseeing all this and attending all these different departmental meetings, to say, well, this is an issue over here, and this is an issue over here, and yet now we're looking at this phase coming up, and traffic management, and details, and all these other little, they're tiny little things we think right now, but they're not when you're sitting in traffic going, who said this could happen? So, I think that those are the intricate pieces that this person, as I see it, would help manage. So, anyway, I think the more we look at this and come up with questions, comments, or concerns and share them with Larry, and Chris gets that information, we can at least approach it.
Hopefully we come back with something that's comfortable and we get us to our.
Right.
Because I do think we agree on our endpoint.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So we'll all do that. Oh, Sharon, do you want to speak?
Yes, I would like to say something. At the meeting today, we did come up with some things, and so I'm going to speak for the committee because they agreed with it. I want to preface this a little bit, which is what I did this morning, as to where I'm coming from with my thoughts on this, all right? I worked for pharmaceutical companies, and I handled a lot of projects, drug projects that had to go to the FDA. They went to Europe, they went to Japan. They were big projects, they're multi-million-dollar projects. This project is cost of $250 million over 40 years, all right? The way I would see this working is kind of the perspective from where I came from, where you would have a person and every one of you would be a department. You could be the Board of Selectmen, you would be the town administrator, the Board of Health, you would be real estate and open space. Every one of the departments that we have here is going to fit into that CWMP, all right? There's got to be somebody and some place that is going to oversee that whole project. This phase 2 is a small portion of this, a really small portion. Somebody has got to oversee all of this and keep it flowing together. Not one where you've got this committee meeting with that committee. It's got to be where you have one person bringing every one of them together on a regular basis, whatever it be, weekly, monthly, whatever is needed. And that person that's coming to that meeting is going to be held responsible for their section of what is needed in that CWMP. And I'm going to put out a question to you that I don't want you to answer. How many have actually read that decision and what is needed to be reported back, what is needed to be developed, what policies? They want procedures on your monitoring, how you're monitoring, why you're doing it, and how you're going to use it. What are the results, all right? This is 40 years. How many of us are going to be here in the next 20? I probably am not. I hope not.
Sign me up.
All right? This stuff has to be documented. The way we worked it was each one of those departments, they kept their documents, all right? Because that was their responsibility. They did it. But I had a copy of it in one central place. And if the FDA needed something, they came to me. If Europe needed, they came to me. I might have not had all the answers, but I had a file drawer there that had all the paperwork for that entire dossier. In 20 years, if somebody walks back to you and says, what about such and such that happened back in 2018? Is it documented? And if it is, where is it? Because if you don't have it in paper, it ain't done. And that is the way they're going to look at it. All right? If you look at that, what is required by that CWMP, not the CWMP, the decision that was handed down, and what needs to be reported back. The way I see it would be you would need a project manager, and that project manager could report to the Board of Selectmen and Dan. I don't see somebody here, neither Dan nor anybody else, that would be able to do their job as wastewater water superintendent and still manage this massive project. Do we have a stormwater policy? Do we have a fertilizer policy? Is it written? Who's doing it? Was it given it back? What about the permits for all the buildings that went up? That's supposed to go back to the Cape Cod Commission. Is it done? I don't know, Chris. Is it done? I don't know. Does anybody know? Has anything gone back? So I guess that's where I'm coming from. and I don't mean to sound like lecturing, although that's the way, it's sounding, but it's like, I've read this numerous times, and I look at it and I think, oh my God, are we doing any of this? I'm not saying it's not being done. I'm just saying it's not recorded anywhere. I don't know if it's being done. It would be hard for our committee to really look at this and say, go back and say to the Board of Health, you know, do you have this policy or that policy, or go to waste, or go to the water department, or go to real estate and open space, or the fact that we're supposed to stay flow neutral, that we're not supposed to. Who's pulling all of this together? I don't see, for as great as I think Dan is, and he's been through this project, and I've talked to him about it, all right? Yes, he can handle some parts of it. He could probably oversee a person that would hold all these meetings, and you will need to do it because you're not going to know. And if we don't have a central location for this, I'm telling you, in 15 years, it's going to be a major issue because nobody's going to know where the documents are, who has them, or even if they've been submitted. So this is my take on it. It's going to be the last time you hear me spiel this, but this is the way I see it. No, it won't.
Yeah, I think I mean.
This is the way I see this project going, and unfortunately, it is coming from my perspective, from what I've done. And when you look at the cost of this, at $250 million, can we have one person that's running the water department really running this project? Not that this person is going to develop anything. They just want to make sure, I see that this is in here. Is this being done? Was this submitted? Where are we with this? Who's responsible for it? I would bet, does anybody even know who to go back to? Who's responsible for what? I mean, even for our committee to look at this, I don't know where to go with it. I put the spreadsheet together. I looked at it again, and I would probably revamp. I could leave the spreadsheet as it is, but I would go back and maybe make more definitive, this needs to be done, and not have 5 people that are responsible. There's one person. Maybe there's different, like natural resources or whatever, fitting into that decision. But one person has to be responsible for a certain type of report that has to be submitted. And that's got to be recorded somewhere by somebody. So that's my take on the way I see this position going. Before I think we can come up with what little pieces need to be done, you as a board need to decide on a structure, on how you want to do this. And what are you willing to go to the town for as far as hiring somebody? Should it be a contractor that maybe after 2 years, they like it and we like them, you hire them to work under Dan? I don't know. That's your decision. But I think you're missing the big picture. Is the way I see it, is this is a huge project, and it's going to take a long time, and believe me, most of us, some of us might still be here. But I sure won't.
No,
And
you raise a lot of good, issues and content that we do need to address. And I mean, some of those go all the way to, contractors, submitting their as-built in terms of what they've accomplished, and some of it goes back to easements and how this whole process is going to continue to flow. So we do have to look at the overall large
Yes.
picture, all the way down to the tiny pieces. So, Chris?
Yeah, I just, I always get nervous when comments like this are made and just we leave the general public with that idea that, we don't know what we're doing. And, the reality is, I have no idea.
No, wait,
about-
hold on a minute. Wait, I never said that
Okay,
you don't know
no.
what you're doing.
So let's just let Chris
All right, go ahead.
respond, please.
So I don't know anything about the FDA. I've never confronted the FDA. I've never taken on projects. But I've been in several towns where we have, our water system now is over $200 million worth of assets that was built over time. And Dan Pelletier is the one who is responsible for filing the necessary documents to make sure that we stay in compliance. In the world of DEP, which I've had a lot of exposure to, a lot of experience with, they do have a lot of those elements. They also recognize that we are a leader amongst towns down here making progress. So they ultimately want to make sure that we comply with those elements, but they are also going to work with us in the compliance of those. So I don't disagree that, you know, we can't have everything go to Dan, that we do need the additional resources. I think that would be beneficial. But I also don't want people to think that, you know, I have read through all that material.
So
I
let me
have-
ask you a question. Do we have a policy?
I'm not gonna be given the opportunity
Yeah,
to finish my.
Sharon,
Go ahead.
let's just let him,
Go ahead.
you know, finish
Go
his
ahead.
statement, because he's actually responding, and he has
All right.
been heavily involved, so.
Okay,
Because we do have, you know, I'm aware of the fertilizer management. As Selectman Ballantyne knows, we had a discussion with the previous Board of Health Director. We thought we had a
Numerous.
compliance, and as we've found out, we should be more compliant. And so we are going back and looking at those things to try to coordinate and line up and make sure that we have those things covered. So, I mean, I've been in government for a long time, and we're trying to put those pieces together. You do ask me to run the town. I mean, this is not a side gig, so having help is something that is important. But those elements, we are looking at and are trying to address those elements. And I just don't want the general public to think that we are not, that's all.
Thank you, Chris. Ed, did you have a?
Yeah, you know, as I listen to everything that's being said, you know, you have several different parts that we're talking about, and I think we're confusing a lot of it. There's the comprehensive wastewater plan, which is a 40-year activity.
Right.
And it has innumerable different parts to it, and filings, et cetera. And it's going to change over time, presumably. That's sort of, what do they call it, an adaptive management plan. But right now, what we have coming at us is a construction project, which is going to be in a defined area and interfacing with a defined number of our citizens who have lots of questions about that construction project. It's going to be quite expensive, and, you know, my argument has always been to have a project manager that oversees to make sure we're getting the value in that construction project. Not all the, you know, he's not going to do all the filings for compliance. That's up to, I don't know if it's CDM
Right.
Hill or somebody else that does that. And he's not going to operate the system. He's going to get it from the plan and the contact, the contract that we hire, the document, to the point where it's complete and it's ready for people to start hooking into. When it's at that point, that's the point when I see our sewer water department taking over, managing, overseeing the hookups, getting it operational and up and running. But we need that person to make sure that all of the residents are ready to interface, to give their information that's necessary when they start digging up their street, and that it's done in a cost-effective manner. Because, you know, that's what I think we need somebody to look after,
That's not what,
you know.
Madam Chair, that's not what we agreed, even prior to it being on the board. That's not what we agreed to.
I
We
know.
agreed to build a system to the point where it's operational, hooked up, and fully functional, and then hand it over for operations to them. It wasn't to have them, because that's not just an interface, that's integral to the entire project. I mean, that's the end of every single pipe that's got a service hookup potential, has to have an individual that does something that we're telling them to do.
Right.
Madam Chair, if I may, I think we've covered enough tonight.
I think, right,
Give
let's get
details.
feedback.
I would just like to, if I may, wrap it up in the sense of supporting Chris, that, you know, Sharon, you make some good points. My interaction with other communities from the collaboratives and so on has been we're at least equal, and I think in advance of most of the other communities on the Cape of how we're trying to put this together. You know, this is a new project for us. This is much broader than building a building in terms of all the pieces we're trying to get together. The good news, that's the good news, and I think the further good news is, the reason we're talking about this, we have a chance to try to organize this in a way that we like. So, you know, I just plead to give me all your comments, and let's put it together so we're comfortable. But we're, you know, at this moment, we're in good shape. What we're trying to do is be sure we maintain where we are.
Thank you, Larry. And I think that's important to recognize, is that, you know, it's been a long process, and, you know, we're trying to make sure that we're approaching it in the best manner that we can in terms of being organized for the future. And so I think we have a lot of different, you know, opinions and ideas and things we need to collaborate and share so that we get the most precise RFP we can. So, thank you. And thank you both for your work on that. And now we will go to the approval of contract between the Town of Harwich and Weed and Feed Incorporated for improvements to Cranberry Valley Golf Course in the amount of $53,947.
Madam Chair, can I interrupt Sean just for 1 second? The next wastewater committee meeting is on December 4. So I would try to bring something back to this committee after that,
Okay.
just timing wise.
So you want our comments sooner than later?
I do,
Thank you.
because I'll work on them, I'll bring them in so we have the input from them.
Right.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
sorry, Sean.
Sorry, Sean.
Problem.
Good evening, how are you?
Good. How are you all doing today?
Fine, thank you.
The contracts you guys have in front of you are for construction to be done in Cranberry Valley. 2 cart paths on number 12 Green and number 6 T. 12 is 249 linear feet. Number 6 is 400 linear feet. It's part of a master plan for cart paths that we established almost 10 years ago. So we just basically been taking a little bit off that plan each time as we go to upgrade the cart paths. And then the other stuff that we have going on are some bunker renovation around some green spaces that usually take the worst pounding, south facing. So on number 2, number 3, and number 8 are the holes that are going to be done. The money comes out of the capital side of the operating budget.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, no problem.
Chris, did you want to say anything?
He sat there, so I wanted to have him get up and do
I haven't been here in a while, so I don't mind.
Welcome back.
Yes.
Any questions, comments from the board?
I'm not second guessing Sean nor Clem and the golf committee, and they have the money in their budget. I don't.
Don has a question.
It's not so much a question. We're almost there, but we're not there. If when you put a contract in here, that we have a sheet of paper that actually has somebody saying, I recommend that the Board of Selectmen adopt and accept this contract, whether it's Evan or the town administrator, I don't care. Everything here is fine, but that one last thing we seem to be having a problem getting is that it's not the verbal. I wanted to pack it that there is an individual who's actually saying, I recommend that you accept this proposal.
So would you like the form to be amended to say, as town administrator, I recommend that this be approved for adoption?
Yes.
That's good.
That's fine.
If I
Everybody
may,
fine.
if I may, I'm not going to go far with this.
Michael.
Okay, good.
So the last page of the signature thing. Great job.
Thank you.
Contract's perfect. Thank you. The last page of the signature thing. Now, Chris, town administrator, is the certified procurement officer for the town of Harwich. And I believe the only one, other than Carolyn certified, and maybe Bob. Evan's not yet, correct?
I believe Evan is, Carolyn is, and I am. Bob is not.
All I want is, this signature thing says Board of Selectmen if over 50,000, which we agreed.
Yeah?
Town administrator if it's under 50,000. I just want the town administrator, or whoever the procurement officer is, to certify. Is
I signed the
that
front
your
page.
signature?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've been
I
signing them
can't read
because
that
of that.
signature. And fine, thank you.
All right.
As long as you're signing it as the procurement
As
officer,
procurement officer.
I'm comfortable with it, because then you've done the research. I'm not a lawyer. I can't go through these every week.
Yep.
It's too much.
I'm with you.
That's all I have. Thank you, Chris.
I'm just gonna say,
Print
I can't
underneath
read
of it.
your signature.
Mine's only one
Can't
letter.
read my writing.
That's right.
Yeah, mine's only one letter.
Be a prerequisite.
Okay, Don, you have any more comments?
Nope, no, it-
Ed?
Well, my only comment with the name of a firm like Weed and Feed, I expected it to be a
Watch it now.
fertilizing contract. I didn't realize.
Mike?
that's one way of reading it.
I move that we approve the contract between the town of Harwich and Weed and Feed Inc. for improvements to Cranberry Valley Golf Course in the amount of $53,947.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Just to let you know too, we've done Weed and Feed done a lot of work for Cranberry Valley and the town of Harwich. They put the irrigation system in, they did the bunker renovation, the range expansion, so we're very comfortable with the contractor, so
Great.
we have no issues.
Thank you very much, Sean.
You're welcome.
If you picked them, I'm comfortable.
Thank you, you guys have a good night.
You too. So nothing under old business, so we'll go to Chris, Town Administrator's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to take an opportunity to kind of plug on the housing coordinator status. I think that that's due in by Thursday, so if anyone is interested or listening, we certainly want to have as many applications as we can. We have proactively sent that out to different firms, so looking forward to getting a couple bids. That's relevant to the CPC funding for the housing trust. That was part of that request. On the contract approval, this will be one of the last ones that I could do under the 50,000 threshold. This was basically just cleaning the stones, so this is pretty straightforward. So I did, it was under the 50,000, so we just put it on there just to disclose. Basically, it's just cleaning up the stones, acid washing to make sure that they're more legible. So just to identify that element. That was funded by CPC at $49,000, so that came in a little bit under bid. Just a couple other items that I wanted to cover. Probably about 2 months ago, the board voted the land use controls. We sent it off to DEP. DEP has a few minor tweaks. They're going to work through those tweaks. They probably will ask for, God bless you.
Thank
They
you.
probably will ask for a second confirmation vote. There's nothing earth-shattering in there, to be perfectly honest. But I just wanted to give you a heads up that we did send it. They had a couple of items that they wanted to have looked at. As was alluded to earlier, I did attend the men's breakfast last Friday. I did pass out the 5-step program. So every time, 5-step program for hooking up to the sewers. I should make sure I continue that thought.
Sounded like half of them.
That was out there. We did show a video, too, that the HCT folks had done on Colebrook, so I'll bring that in. Actually, I thought people seemed to like that as part of the presentation. We also did do a drone, which I want to give credit to Channel 18. I don't know if it was Caleb or if it was Jamie who was the pilot, but they did the drone flight over Saquatucket to see when it was totally empty. So it was kind of neat. People that brought it back. There was, I think, probably about 10 people in the room that were here before it was a harbor. So they remembered it before it was a harbor, which was it goes back quite a ways. But I thought that was interesting. And then just a reminder to folks that there is a DHY overview meeting this Thursday at 6 over at the community center. I don't remember which room in the community center it's in, but it's in the community center. Really, that's for selectmen, wastewater, capital outlay, wastewater support committee, and finance committee have all been invited, and I think we posted for all of them. But it is to do kind of an overview. I know Dawn and Larry are on that committee working on that. But just to kind of let the larger community know the status of the details. The special legislation is already waiting action at the legislature. This is just the details of how things would actually work.
And that's just, it's not, the invitation is to Harwich's committees?
Just to Harwich. They're doing individual tours at each town. So Dave Young will be doing the overview. Thank you, though, Ed. And then last thing, I didn't get a chance to get this in there, so we could formally put it on, but this time of year, the holiday season always brings out that by regulation, the Board of Selectmen has the ability to issue a selectmen's holiday. So I did put together, and I believe we have at your places, I think probably, I'm just looking for, I think, a little bit of feedback. We can formally put it on for the next meeting. But the next meeting is the week of Thanksgiving, so if people want to plan. What I was looking for or suggesting to the board, obviously Thanksgiving Day and the day after Thanksgiving are already contractually holidays. So I thought to try to help people, a lot of people do travel on Thanksgiving itself, that if we could do, the request is for a half-day to close at noontime on the Wednesday before. So if people do have travel plans, they have the ability to do it. And then I think last year I had put in for some time for Christmas Eve and on New Year's Eve day. I have decided not to recommend anything on New Year's Eve day. We had a lot of people came in last year to pay their taxes early on the property tax. I know there was a tax law change, but it was a reminder to me that a lot of people do want to do things at the end of the year, the calendar year, to make sure that they get credit for that. So the request on this would be Christmas is on a Tuesday, and then Christmas Eve is a Monday. We would, in each one of these cases, the week would be, we wouldn't do a long Monday evening, so it would be the 8:30 to 4. But the request would be, instead of having people come in for a half-day on Christmas Eve, my initial reaction was to do a half-day, but where it's a Monday holiday and then Christmas is on a Tuesday, my suggestion would be, it would be a request of, in total, of a day and a half of Selectmen's holidays, so a half-day before Thanksgiving, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and then Christmas Eve, instead of doing a half-day, just do a full day off. But that's the recommendation that I would make to the board for your consideration. And as much guidance as you guys can give me so I can let the workforce know what your leanings are, that would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Is that it?
Yes, thank you.
Ed?
Just a comment on the contract approval for the Mount Pleasant gravestone conservation. Just as a matter of disclosure, my wife's family does have a lot of, well represented in Mount Pleasant amongst the gravestones, so.
Thank you. Don?
Yeah, it's listed, but it wasn't part of what he said, the department reports. I don't want to come off as prudish, and I do want to say the Freedom Ferry has an immense benefit to the town commercially because there is no other ferry anywhere from Hyannis on out. And I think John does a terrific job as the harbor master. But I personally have a problem, and it's right here, so it's not that he's hiding anything, but in his report for department, invited and attended Freedom Ferry season-ending dinner for staff and guests, a first-class event. I personally don't care whether it's $50 or less in terms of the ethics, but I'm a little uneasy about somebody going to a dinner with somebody else that they have oversight over, potentially. So, I mean, it's too late for that now. He certainly didn't feel like he was doing anything, or he wouldn't have put it in his report. But the fact is, I mean, I just don't have a good feeling about anybody who's regulating somebody also going out to dinner with them.
Ed? Have anything?
Nope.
Michael?
You take Larry first.
Oh, sorry, Larry.
Take me first, okay. I just compliment Don on the good proclamation at the veterans. It was, I think, fairly well attended, the veterans. I'm always concerned that people aren't paying attention to this important holiday, so it was nice that we had nice weather.
I rewrote it and I asked questions later, so I know they were listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that will raise an issue. Traditionally, the Veterans Day always ends with playing of taps by a bugler who was unavailable this time, and we'll arrange to have the girls a cappella choir from Monomoy Regional High School to sing the Star Spangled Banner.
It's terrific.
And from what I gathered from the assembled crowd, that while they miss the bugler and hopes that he comes back, I also really hope that the a cappella choir comes back.
That's
No, I
Because
made that- I made that-
they were absolutely
I
phenomenal.
made the comment that the Bucher just lost his job, and
No, no.
and the
There's
folks
room
around
for
me
both.
all agreed with my comment.
He's got a new partner.
There's room for both.
Michael?
Okay, now I'm gonna continue my tirade on social media. I promise you all it'll be the last. Because now it's not only irritating and tiring, it's not amusing or irritating anymore, it's tiring. So I was the victim this week. And, you know, Harwich's Old Timers page, there was a post put up about me making a name calling at the elections of one of our residents, also a friend of mine. She put the post up there. It just happens that I think I'm being punished for my comments about Sandra Hall's, and the second post from Sandra Hall will explain more. But I was accused of putting a name out there to this person, and I was never asked if I said it. And not only did Sandra Hall, as the webmaster, not take it down, she didn't call and ask me for a comment or ask me if it was true, which I couldn't have said anything anyway because we're not supposed to debate on there. But she then went on underneath of it to comment about the audacity of a sitting selectman to make comments like that to the public. So without proof of that, that post never should have been up there. And the same group of people that I spoke of last week, the same small group of people that I spoke of that are often negative to the town administrator and to this board, were the ones that commented underneath. Margaret Mantos, Peggy Gabor, David Sadowski, and Sandra Daniels are the 4 worst offenders. And they're extremely, extremely rude, and it's a very one-sided conversation. The second post was about the selectmen flapping their wings and not doing anything to get legislation passed so that the debate could happen on Harwich Old Timers. Now, Sandra Hall, as one of the authors of our Harwich Home Rule Charter and a strong advocate for things happening at the meetings and tables, committee meetings, and not outside, it surprised me that she allows this to go on and promotes it on her page, knowing that we can't do anything about it. David Sadowski comments that it's ironic that I'm complaining about that page, and that we're having these conversations at the meeting and that I'm grandstanding. Well, newsflash, these meetings are public meetings. Our committee meetings are public meetings. All these people are welcome to come and stand at the microphone and have these conversations. Instead, they hide behind their keyboards at home and insult the people that are working hard for this town. Now, tonight was a great reminder to me of how great this town is. And you get Richard Waystack standing up talking about how much we do for this town and his love and a lot of our love for this town. And then we had Sharon Flieger, who stood up and completely disagreed with what some of our opinions were about what was going on with wastewater. And now that's democracy. She stood up at the microphone at a public meeting where everybody could be involved, and she said her piece. And amazing. Nobody here bit her head off. But these people in particular at home hiding behind their keyboards, I welcome you to come to this meeting, agenda topic with the chair, and come and debate it in public and take advantage of the process that we're afforded.
Thank you, Michael.
That's it.
Can I get a motion to adjourn, or do you
No,
want to say more?
I just think the comments that Michael made are right to the point. You know, this is a venue. Anybody can come. You don't need a permission to join this, like you do apparently with the Facebook page. And we don't censor you, which apparently happens on the Facebook page. And, you know, this is where we're supposed to conduct government. We're not supposed to conduct it on a membership-only private digital forum.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. And I think, you know, to that point, we've all experienced various pieces of that, so I appreciate your comments.
Of course, these meetings may get a lot longer now.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Aye.
Thank you.